away we go.
I will kick it off. Okay, thank you everybody for coming. My name is Colette. I work at the Plymouth County District Attorney's Office. I work in the Domestic Violence Unit. I also spend a lot of time with these wonderful companions, and they do a really wonderful job. But I also do a lot of work with healthy relationships with younger people. So what does that look like? You know, we'll go over some different components and whatnot. But first I want to be able to have all of my good friends here introduce themselves and the wonderful work that they do. So how about Dennis, you kick it off?
I am Dennis DeRoche with the Sheriff's Department. Been on the job 30 years now. And this is my partner, Sarah.
Goodness.
She's 4 years old, born on the 4th of July. You guys are so sick of me. You know my spiel. She's 4. She's a good girl. She's a great Dane. Harlequin coat, something. And that's it.
It's a good story then.
Yeah. I'm sick of saying it.
I'm Leanne. I'm from the Hull Police Department. This is my partner, Pedix.
Hi.
Pedix is
Hi.
he's 16 months old. He's trained, he's a certified comfort dog, which he's not very good at. And he also does friendly find, search, and rescue. So if we have like kids with autism or elderly people that wander off, Pedix can go out and find them. He's really good at that. So I guess you can only really be good at one thing. That's all I have.
I'm Marina. I'm with the Marshall Boys and Girls Club, and this is Desi. He's 8 months old now. And he's still a little bit wild and likes to play with all the other puppies. Yeah, just likes to hang out with all the little kids at the after-school program right now.
I'm Mary Beth Simmons. I'm with the Pembroke Police Department. This is Sasha. She is actually 10 months old now. She's a yellow lab. When we got her, she actually has 2 other sisters that are also police comfort dogs. So if you ever see the Halifax or Plimpton dogs, Aggie and Roxy, those are her actual sisters. So pretty cute. We've been together since October. So she's with me. She's out on the street with me. She's going to be on in the schools.
Hello.
My name's Bobby. I'm a detective with the Bridgewater State University Police Department, and this is Canine Mikey, my partner. I've had her since August of 2022. She's a 4-year-old American Black Lab. She was born in prison in New York, and she was actually raised and trained by the inmates. So when we got her at 2.5 years, she had a little over 14,000 hours of training.
So we're going to talk a little bit about healthy relationships and what that looks like. Not just relationships with, you know, the love component, but also friendships. What does that look like? So we have this neat little slide back here with a couple of things, a couple of components that we want to go over. What's one of the first things you think of when we say a healthy relationship? What's one of the things that comes up that you should see if you're in a good, solid relationship? Yeah, communication. I think we have that up there too. Why is that important? Why is it important to have good communication in a relationship?
So that you understand each other and
Yes.
someone doesn't get mad.
Right. Yep, communication allows you to develop that healthy component. It also allows, you know, like they just said, if there's any kind of problem to work out, what that looks like, and just to kind of foster a healthy relationship by being able to talk to each other. It's interesting because we see forms of communication going on here with the comfort dogs, right? They're trying to say what, you know, what they like, what they don't like, what they need. And their job too is when someone is in need of comfort or for them to sit with, they can kind of pick up what the need is as well. So it's all forms of communication that make that a healthier type of relationship. Yeah, definitely. Bobby, you want to add anything to?
Yeah, so part of the reason that they asked me to be here is being a detective at Bridgewater State. I deal with a lot of individuals that are young adults, 18 to 25 primarily. So I interact with a lot of people who are going through things that you may already be going through or are going to be going through. So we wanted to come here and just talk to you about healthy relationships, some things that you may see, you know, growing up and getting out of high school and moving forward either into the workplace or college, and then the best way to interact with your friends and your relationships, and then also obviously so you guys can hang out with all the dogs. So moving forward.
Yeah, and I was going to comment a little bit about what it looks like when you are communicating with somebody and when it's a role that one person really wants to talk to you about something important. There's this thing called active listening. When you listen to somebody, there's a couple of different ways of listening. You know, if you're going to tell me a story, I might be on my phone, I might be looking at the clock, I'm listening, but I'm not actively listening, right? So if you have something that really is important to you, it's important for a partner or a friend to be able to put the phone down, kind of just let you know I'm here and I hear you. That's really important in any kind of relationship. And if you're not seeing that in your relationships, that may not be the best thing to foster communication. If you really need somebody, if you really need to talk about something and they're only half listening, it might not give you what you need from that relationship. To bring in the dogs as an example, they need to listen to the handlers to be able to understand the communications and vice versa. So there's that active listening component of what the needs are and how they're going to go forward with that. Right now, each one is kind of doing their thing, and they're exhibiting that that type of a piece of a relationship. What are you all seeing when it comes to like friendships? What's your biggest complaint when it comes to a friendship? Like the friends are they there for you? Do you feel like, there's things that could improve when you talk about a good solid friendship? What do you all want when it comes to a good friendship, a best friend, somebody that's there for you? What are those things that stand out? Yeah.
Someone who shows up.
Yes, someone who shows up, because if you're not there, none of this is going to matter. You can't communicate with somebody that isn't present, right? You can't talk to somebody about something that matters if they're not present. And you certainly can't have anybody listen if somebody doesn't show up. So that's the first piece, is just showing up and just showing that you are a good friend. If you take that over to maybe a relationship, somebody you're dating, that's really important. You want them to show up. If they don't, well, then there's an even bigger problem. And what does that look like when a dating type of relationship? What's the biggest thing you expect? Kind of sounds like expect. Respect, right? That's important. If you're not respected in a relationship, then there's going to be problems down the line when it comes to how you're treated, what your needs are. That's a big issue. Helping a friend in need goes along with what this gentleman just said here, is that you got to show up, you got to be there. So I think that's pretty important. Conflict and problem solving, I think we just kind of touched on that a little bit before. What if there's problems? How do you solve them? Typically, if you're in a relationship, do you talk it out? Do you fight it out? Do you walk out of the room? What's the right thing to do? What are you seeing?
Just make sure not to get mad, I guess.
Yeah, and you can fight fair. You can get angry because you don't want to stifle yourself and not be passionate. You want to be honest, right? But you certainly don't want to throw stuff and be violent, right? There's a healthy way to communicate. If something really upsets you, it's good if you can talk it out, use the communication, show up, sit down, talk about it in a healthy way. I think that's important. Yes, ma'am.
I was also just gonna say, it's totally reasonable to ask for like a beat if you're feeling heated in the moment.
Yeah,
Be
absolutely.
like, I need a sec.
Yep.
Process what you want to say.
Yeah.
Come back to it a little cooler.
Yeah, feel free to jump in. She's right, because if something is disclosed to you, in a relationship, and you are real upset about it, maybe you take a step out of the room. I need some time. Maybe you even say, we'll talk tomorrow. I need to go and kind of process, instead of saying something that you think is going to be wrong. Certainly don't want to start anything violent, but taking that time away and thinking about what just happened. Because if you sleep on it, you're going to have a whole different mindset the next day. Whether it's a relationship, or it's a friend, it's going to give you a different viewpoint the next day, right? I think that's a pretty good point. Kindness. Kindness is a real important thing. We don't have enough of it in this world, right? This right here is kindness. This is great. This is why we bring them. It makes you feel good, makes you smile, right? What is it about being kind versus being mean? How does that make you feel? When somebody's really kind to you, does it make you feel really good? It makes you want to be kind back, right? What about when somebody's just mean to you? How does that make you feel? Yeah. And it kind of spills over, because now you're in a bad mood and you might treat somebody else mean. But when you're truly kind, you're opening up yourself and you're giving back something good. And in a relationship, that's what makes it grow, and that's what makes it healthy. It's just being kind, right? So this piece here I want to point out. When you're in any kind of relationship, whether it's friends, whether it's a loving relationship, you should always feel safe in that relationship. Always. There should never be that what if. There should never be that little feeling, in the back of your mind. You should never feel intimidated. You should never feel hostility or threatened, ever. especially in dating relationships. And I see that a lot with young people. I know you think maybe you can work it out, maybe it'll get better, maybe it'll go away. If it continues, it's not healthy. So it's something that you need to really think about. And just know that you're worth something, right? Yeah, you're worth more, and that's something that you have to really kind of look into. When it comes to any of this, feeling safe in a relationship, what does that mean to you, feeling safe in any kind of relationship? What would you say makes you feel really good and safe? I think she feels safe, yeah, with you.
It's disgusting.
Feeling comfortable just to be your whole self.
Yeah, exactly. And if you feel like things are going really wrong, it's that one person you can go to and you can talk candidly and openly and not be judged. That's a big thing too. There's no judgment. There's nothing to make you feel worse about the problem. I think that's really important. Yeah. And when you talk about friendships, I think that's even more important because these are relationships that you're making now that sometimes last a lifetime. So, 30, 40, 50 years on the road, you still got that best friend. That's great. And you've built that relationship, right? And you've built it on trust. That's a huge thing. You've built it on respect. You've built it on communicating. And, 50 years from now, we'll be gone, but old, and you still have that best friend who shows up. Like he had just said, that's wonderful. That's a wonderful, healthy relationship that you're starting to build now the right way. When it comes to intimate relationships, it takes a little bit more. It takes kind of traveling down that road together. And what does that look like? What are your commonalities? What are your disagreements? From my point of view, when I talk with some of the survivors I work with, it's about safety. So again, you have to feel safe in a relationship. You don't ever want to feel like your safety's compromised, like your physical safety's compromised. You want to make sure that it's a good feeling. Do you all feel comfortable, like in the school, if there was ever an issue or a problem, you could talk to somebody? You could find somebody that you could say, you know what, I'm not feeling safe. I need to go somewhere, right? Yeah. And that's a good thing to have, because if you ever get to that point where you're not feeling safe or you're really troubled by something in a relationship, you need to have a trusted adult and you need to be able to go to somebody. Even if it's just sitting in the presence of the dog and patting them and feeling comfort and being able to talk about what's happening, that's important, right? Yeah, I feel like I'm taking the floor. I want to have Bobby talk a little bit about the school.
Sure.
What happens, if you guys decide to pursue college or what that looks like after high school, what that might look like safety-wise.
Yeah, so when you guys go to college, if you go to college, for most people, it's the first time that they're away from their home for the first time. They're living on their own. They're making decisions without their parents' immediate input. So it's a lot of new experiences for people. And for a lot of people, they have no issue following the right path going through college. But there's times, and it happens in college, and I'm sure everyone who's been to college here has experienced it, that you're making new friends, you're developing new relationships, and you're potentially experimenting with different things, whether it be alcohol or drugs or sex or what have you. And you just want to try to stay on the right path and make those good, healthy decisions. You don't want to surround yourself with people who don't make you feel safe, who expect things from you instead of respect you, who force you to do something that maybe you're not comfortable with. And unfortunately, I oftentimes see that because people are going into it and they make a number of wrong decisions. They're not making all the wrong decisions. They're still in college, they're still trying to do the right thing, but they get caught up in that party mentality. So you start to see a lot of bad decisions culminate that turn to maybe worse decisions.
Yeah, and with that too, the word consent, what does that mean? It's important. Yeah, give permission. So that's important. You find yourself in these situations. Consent isn't just a one-time thing either. If you consent to one thing, it doesn't mean that the rest is a package deal, whatever it is that you're talking about with a partner. Consent is where you're comfortable, where you say yes, or if you say no, that's your boundary. So that's really important to know what consent is and that it isn't a one-time shot. You might feel one way right now, you might change your mind in an hour or in a day, and that's your right to do so. So it's your body, your life, so that's something to make sure that you're looking at when it comes to relationships. Yeah. Balance of boundaries. right? Because you can spend too little time together, but then you can spend too much and you find yourself isolated from the other things that are important in your life, your family, your friends, schoolwork. So that's a good, healthy balance of, you know, I'll see you tonight, I'll text you maybe in a little bit, but I've got to get to sleep at some point. You know, if there's a relationship that has you texting all night long, that's not really a healthy aspect. If that person expects you to respond to that text at 1 in the morning, 2:30, 2:45, that's breaking all boundaries. That's not healthy. So I like the way you did put that. It's a fine balance of, you know, what that looks like, how much time we spend together, and then time apart. I'm going to go out with my friends tonight. I'm going to hang with my family. That's important. That's super important.
Yeah, and like you were saying, it's constantly being with someone, although it may be great, it doesn't even have to physically be with someone anymore. Could be Snapchat, could be Instagram, could be however you're communicating. If they're snapping you 2, 3, 4 in the morning and they're getting pissed you're not responding, that's not a healthy relationship.
Right.
Now, if they're just snapping you because they want to keep your streak alive, all right, that's a little different. But if it's constant and then they're getting upset when they're not responding, that's not a healthy relationship. Like you said, you want to take that separation. And it's in all aspects of your life. Like, I'm sure every one of us here has worked around the clock, worked midnights, done overtime. But when I go away, my work email is shut off, my work cell phone is shut off, because you need that break, and you need that in relationships too.
Yeah. And the one thing I'll say if you decide to go to college, or even if when you go out in the real world, don't try to fit in, stand out. Do what works for you. Because it's not going to matter 10 years from now if you tried to fit in with that group and maybe you took that drink of alcohol and got in trouble. That might affect you all the way. But if you try to stand out and do the right thing and do your own thing, you're going to end up with a good, solid circle of healthy friendships and relationships. So it's that simple, but yet it's difficult because of peer pressure. Like Bobby said, you're going to be in college or you're going to be in a job setting, and you're always going to, and that peer pressure never really ends. I'm not going to tell you how old I am, but I still feel it, and it goes back to boundaries. What works for you? What's healthy? What does that person really mean to you? So that's a lifelong thing you have to set for yourself, is just learning what those things mean.
And it could be, you know, friendships or your coworkers too,
Yeah.
when you go into the workplace. Because once you go into the workplace or even college, there's an age gap that you might not be used to right now, because you're used to your peers being in high school, you're all within 4 years of each other. But when you get into work or you get into college, you might have people that are significantly older than you. For instance, I became a police officer when I was 21 years old. I had people on my department that were in their 50s and 60s, and they're now my peers. And I was not used to that because they're 30, 40 years older than me. So they may see something that they're used to doing because they've been doing it that way for years, and I'm now might not be comfortable because I'm like, well, that's not what I learned, and now you want me to do it that way. So it's going to happen throughout your life, and you want to just set those boundaries so that you're not being influenced by outside people on what you want to do.
Right, in healthy relationships, you meet each other where you're at. So if you have one belief, and like Bobby said, maybe it's a friend that's a little older, has a different belief, try to figure out what's best for each other. It may work for this person, may not work for the next. It's okay, you have to still be supportive. Just because it's maybe not something that I'm used to, it's something Bobby's used to, of course I'm going to support that, and you know, if it works for him, that's all that matters. That's his choices, you know. So I think we hit mostly everything here.
If you have an intimate relationship, right, the age of consent in Massachusetts is 16 years old. So if you're under 16, you can't consent. If you're dating somebody a little older, you don't want to get them in trouble. The age of consent is 16. However, the age of consent for nudes is 18. So if you are sending any photos, private photos to anybody, and you're under the age of 18, it could potentially get both you and the person receiving it in trouble. And aside from that, although Snapchat says that they self-delete, that is not true. They store them on Snapchat servers for 90 days. People can take screenshots, people can take images. Anything you send may, I'm not saying it will, but may be out there for quite some time. So if you're going to send any private photos, make sure it's going to someone who you truly trust, that you're in a relationship with, and make sure you're older than 18 years old.